host, Alex Garrett.
All right, well, what a big week we had in the last week for life, and we didn't podcast that much, and that was what it was. But I'm back this Saturday. A lot to talk about here on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network. Firstly, I've really I've downsized the podcast and moved things around so that I can make room for you. Yes, I don't want your money. I want your content, okay? If you have an idea for a podcast and don't have a home for it, make the Alex Garrett Podcast Network your home. I'm getting tired of it just being me, to be honest with you, because that's why I call it a network. I want more people. I want to expand it. I could have 12,000 features, and that's not enough. I want your voice on this podcast. We can grow the podcast network out together. I'm sure you got some great ideas. So shoot me an email, alex@alexgnyc.com, alex@alexgnyc.com. Maybe make the subject line podcast pitch or something to that effect. Just so you know, just so I know that you're looking for a home to host your own podcast. Love to make this a production house, not just an Alex Garrett all the time thing. No, I want this to be a production house. Always have been, but now I'm more serious about it. Just as much as I'm serious about disabilities and politics. So, the Center for Independence of New York had a seminar this week about running in politics with a disability. So that kind of was a theme this week, was it not? We have a sitting state senator in Pennsylvania checking himself in to a hospital for clinical depression following his stroke. That would be John Fetterman. It's not funny. It really is not funny what he's gone through. As a senator, as a candidate, the scrutiny, I hate to say jokes about his strokes, but that's what's happened too. And he's not fit to serve. But as someone with a disability, and as someone who, yes, did kick a field goal with one leg at MetLife Stadium, I have a different take on this. People with disabilities, even, emotional disabilities, should be scrutinized. Where does that come from? The Washington Post, back in October of 2022, had written this headline. And of course, you've got to pay for their content, so you don't really get the chance to see it, the full article. But in October, Fetterman's debate scrutiny after his stroke reveals disability divide. Disability advocates, October 27, 2022, after his terrible debate. Remember that? Disability advocates say the Pennsylvania Senate campaign shows that added scrutiny that candidates with disabilities receive. I'm sorry, but are you fit to serve as the U.S. Senate is a legitimate question, and it continues to be, as unfortunately, John Fetterman has clocked himself into a clinic for depression, into a hospital for clinical depression. Candidates of all stripes should receive scrutiny. Everybody talks about George Santos lying. Do you know Madison Cawthorn lied his way to Congress? He had made up the whole story of his unfortunate car crash, that he was left to die. Meanwhile, his best friend says, no, I didn't leave him to die. If it weren't for me, he wouldn't be alive right now. So thank God that Cawthorn's not in Congress, because he lied his way onto it too. And that hurts even more if you're someone in the disabled community, because he was supposed to be, I guess, a beacon of the disabled political candidate. What an inspiration it was that he stood up at the 2020 RNC for the national anthem. What an inspiration. Turns out, guy lied his way onto Congress, Madison Cawthorn. And his story unraveled fairly quickly just after some snooping around. So I do think scrutiny of all stripes is required, even if you have a disability. After all, you are fighting to get on a Senate seat despite your disability. Not use it as a crutch, but to say, hey, look, I have this disability, but I can freaking serve the seat. I can serve the seat to my fullest capacity. That's what the disabled political candidate should strive to do and say. Not vote for me because I'm disabled. Vote for me because I have ideas based on my life experience that can change laws, can change the way we do business in Washington for those with disabilities, can change accessibility in Washington. But no, we don't think like that. We think disabled, according to the Washington Post, we should be thinking disabled candidates shouldn't get scrutiny, should be voted because they're disabled. I don't give a crud if you're disabled. I want to know, can you do the job with your disability? Physical, emotional, mental, however you want to see it. I want to know if you could do the job. Not so much your disability, but can you do the job with it? Can you overcome it? Can you screw inspiration? Can you just do the job? Can you do the job as a person with disabilities? That's what I want to know. And unfortunately, John Fetterman, who deserved the scrutiny then, deserves it now. Not so much the jokes, but the scrutiny then deserves it now. And Pennsylvania's political party, might have to do a special election for him if he cannot get out of this depression. But there shouldn't be a divide about disabilities. There shouldn't be a complaint that disabled people get scrutinized more. That is going to happen. We have to rise above it if we want to be the disabled political candidate. Should we not? Or should we just sit there and say, yeah, vote for me because I'm disabled? What good's that going to do? Tell me why you want to run. Tell me why you're running. Tell me what experience as a person with disabilities changed you so much that you want to go to Washington, you want to go to Albany, you want to go to your state capital and make a difference up there. Or your city council. Which leads me to my next story. Did you see the horror in Denver? Did you hear what happened in Denver? Guy by the name of Chris Hines. Yes, Chris Hines. He's a city councilman of the Denver City Council. He uses a power wheelchair to get up and around places. Well, Monday afternoon, this past Monday, at Cleo Parker Robinson Dance School in Denver, in District 10 of the City Council, Chris Hines had to climb up onto a debate stage because the power wheelchair was unable to get up the stage. There was no accessibility. This is bureaucracy at its finest right here. You tell someone with a disability, yes, we want you to run. We want you to represent the community. But we're also going to approve a debate sponsor that doesn't have disabled accessibility. Let me say it that way. That doesn't have accessibility. This hits on the accountability, adaptability, and accessibility front because I hope now this story in Denver can teach everybody in the nation, hey, you want to have people with disabilities running in Congress, running in City Council, running in the Senate, and you want them to debate? In fact, so much so, you want them to debate or lose $125,000 in what you're calling the Fair Election Fund money? You better make sure that accessibility, that space is accessible. The dance school submitted an application that was approved by the Denver Office of the Clerk and Recorder to meet basic requirements, including ADA accessibility. Except that your main candidate couldn't get up on the stage. I'm hoping to have Chris Hines up. I hope he wants to open about this story, because this is a monumental lesson that could be learned. Thanking the filmmaker Vince Chandler for showing this. A monumental lesson that could be learned is, if you want people with disabilities to run, you also have to make it accessible for their needs. Now, I will be honest, adaptability is something that came easier to me just because I only had the crutches in the leg. But to those in the community that really do have an issue going places, I've seen it. I've seen that steps can be a hindrance, and small doorways can be a hindrance. And now debate stages can be a hindrance. It's got to change. And maybe through this vehicle, the Alex Garrett Podcast Network, we can get things changed. Maybe we need to have a Chris Hines on to discuss his traumatic experience. That's traumatizing. Poor guy's leg was shaking as he was climbing up the stairs. It was bad. It was bad. I'm going to post the link in the story. Thank God for USA Today for posting the video as well. Here's what the ADA says. Employers, state and local governments, businesses open to the public, and other organizations, companies, and providers are all required to follow the law, which says the ADA protects the civil rights of people with disabilities in many aspects of public life. Denver Clerk Paul Lopez apologized, saying no one should have that experience, and I've apologized to Councilman Hines personally. Cleo Parker Robinson Dans also apologized in a statement shared on Facebook on Thursday. And here's where his grace, Hines' grace, comes in. Hines says he's thankful for the apologies following the incidents. It's very kind of them to use this as a moment of reflection, he said. I hope we can all use this as an opportunity for making our community better for everyone, including people with disabilities. Our democracy is stronger when it's representative of all the people. So between Fetterman and Mark and Chris Hines, there is still a lot of work to do for people who do want to make a difference in public life as a politician, but may have that disability of any stripe. And so I'm going to reach out to Chris Hines and offer him a spot on this podcast. I do pray for Senator John Fetterman and what he's going through. The depression is not good. It seems like, after all, there were people after a stroke that knew, that saw this and said, no, let's keep him running. And that's not quite fair either, if he did not have the full command of what he was going to be doing in Senate. I'm sure the stories of these two men are not going to end. I'm sure the stories of those with disabilities that want to run and make a difference in Congress, in Senate, in even local government will not end. And that's why we're going to be on the forefront here on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network adapting feature, where, as you know, in 2023, we're talking adaptability, accessibility, and accountability. And I think if people want to run for disability, run as a person with disabilities, they can hold themselves accountable too. And not just say, vote for me because I'm disabled. Chris Hines didn't say that. He said, let's use what happened to me, not being able to get up on the debate stage, as a, learning moment. And I hope it does. I hope we don't just gloss over these two situations. I know Fetterman's won't be, but I'm sure that because it's a local city council thing in Denver, that'll be glossed over tomorrow. But we're not going to let it be. We're not going to let it be here on the Alex Garrett Podcast Network. So stay tuned as we continue to follow all these stories and more in the adapting community And yes, we'll have some adaptive sports to talk about as well in the coming weeks. Don't worry about that. A lot to do in 2023. Thanks again to Lead for having us on the field at MetLife Stadium. And to kick that field goal was pretty damn special, not going to lie. And again, Alex at alexgnyc.com if you'd like to be part of the Alex Garrett Podcast Network. Have a great day.